So last spring, HSBC, the bank, recruited UK graduates with the promise of interest-free checking. Right? This is a pretty attractive offer, right? You can run up an overdraft, you owe us the money, but we're not going to charge you anything extra. And so, of course, they get thousands of new customers. And then, over the summer, after the students are dispersed, backpacking around or at their summer jobs or whatever, HSBC says, oh, did we say penalty-free? We actually meant we're going to charge you 140 pounds, which is like 800 bucks American. Right? And right, HSBC was safe doing this because they knew they had two advantages over the students. Right? They had an informational advantage. Right? It's hard to move your bank account from bank A to bank B. So even if some students got cranky and did that, it wasn't like a lot of people were going to do it because it's just hard to figure it out. They also had a coordination advantage. Right? HSBC is an institution, they can act decisively. The students are already pretty dispersed, and then by waiting until the summer, right, they're doubly dispersed. They're literally spread all over the globe. They hadn't reckoned on Facebook. Right? So a guy named Wes Streeting, a student at Cambridge, puts up a page on Facebook that says, "Stop the great HSBC ripoff." Right? And thousands of people joined in a matter of days. Right? Because although the students were geographically distributed, they were still socially coordinated for the first time ever. And the first thing that happened is they started sharing tips on trading bank accounts. If you want to move off of HSBC and you want to move over to Halifax, here's how you do it. And they just document it and share it with one another, analogous to the pattern from Flickr. Right? Once one person had solved the information problem, that advantage of HSBC's disappeared. And then the students started protesting. And those protests generated more media, and that media generated more users of the site, and more users of the site generated more protests, and so on. And then they said, you know what, we're all going to be back in school in September. Why don't we go down to the city? Why don't we go down to London's financial district and march around and have a real-world protest in front of HSBC? That protest never happened, and it didn't happen because HSBC caved, right? They sent their PR guy out. He said, whoa, wait a minute, okay, interest-free checking, right? And in the press conference, or penalty-free checking rather, and in the press conference where they announced that they were going to return to penalty-free checking, their PR guy said, well, we certainly wouldn't want our customers to be unhappy. We are, after all, a customer service organization. If you've ever wondered, by the way, why PR people get paid the big bucks, it's being able to say that sort of thing with a straight face. Because HSBC didn't back down because the students were upset. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that going from free to 140 pounds is going to upset people. HSBC backed down because the students were upset and coordinated. The American philosopher William James once said, thinking is for doing, by which he meant we don't have brains to give us access to abstract cogitation. We have brains to help us figure out what to do next. Something analogous is happening in media today. Right? Increasingly, publishing is for acting. Right? Increasingly, media is not just a source of information, it's also a site of coordination. Right? One of the things we can see from the HSBC example is that freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly are now commingled in a single medium. It wasn't just that Wes Streeting put up a page and said, oh, I just want to tell you about this terrible thing that just happened, and then after you read it, you'll know. He said, I want to tell you about this terrible thing that just happened, and after you read it, you'll know, and then we'll be able to do something about it together. Right? And media as a site of coordination, right, is a big change from what we're used to. Here's another story, flash mobs. You may remember flash mobs, sort of the flagpole sitting of 2003, right? A group of people would all subscribe to a flash mob email. And the mail would come with instructions, right? Everybody gather at a certain place at a certain time and then do something moderately surprising in public, right? So all of a sudden, 100 people would sit on a stone ledge in Central Park and start making pigeon noises. Or this is a picture of a seemingly spontaneous pillow fight that broke out in Toronto, right? Now, the funny thing about flash mobs is they were promulgated by a guy who called himself Bill from New York. This is in the original version. And Bill from New York turned out to be Bill Wasik of Harper's Magazine. And what he wanted to do with flash mobs was to launch a kind of interactive critique of hipster culture. He wanted to demonstrate that hipsters are so brain dead that if you tell them that what they're doing is going to be moderately shocking to the bourgeoisie, they will set aside any sense of judgment they have and do any damn fool thing you write down in a piece of math, right? And lo and behold, this happened, and it happened over and over again, right? So the pattern spreads. It spreads, you know, to the West Coast. It spreads to Canada. It spreads to France, England, right? In 2006, it gets to Belarus, right? Somebody puts up a live journal page saying, hey, you guys, let's have a flash mob, right? Let's all go to downtown Minsk and we'll walk around October Square eating ice cream, right? Which is, I guess, what passes for a good time in Minsk. And so here they are, the flower of Belarusian youth, eating ice cream in Minsk. Unusually, though, for this set of photographic documentation, and flash mobs are always photographed and the photographs are always uploaded, came this set of photos. Black-clad secret police dragging those kids bodily out of the square. The problem with the group eating ice cream wasn't the ice cream. It was the group. It's illegal to act in concert in October Square. Lukashenko, the leader of Belarus, is an Eastern European dictator of the old school, and he stole the election in March of 2006. And as has happened in every country like that in Eastern Europe, when there is upset, the main square of the capital city is where protests spontaneously form. It happened in Leipzig, famously with the collapse of the GDR. And so the Lukashenko government said, we know what to do. We just won't let there be groups in October Square. So these kids now have a political protest problem. They know what a protest looks like. They know how to register their voices, and it's been made illegal. And so they hit on flash mobs, kind of ingeniously, right? The Lukashenko government couldn't penetrate the conspiracy because it was up on live journal, right? How much more public could it be, right? And the Lukashenko government couldn't stop the group from entering October Square because when they entered October Square, they weren't a group, which is the whole design principle of flash mobs, right? And it wasn't just, right, media as a site of action, right? They didn't just use live journal to coordinate real-world activity. This is also action as a site of media because those kids didn't just bring their ice cream to October Square. They brought their cameras. Part of the reason they were protesting is they wanted these photos to go up and be available internationally. Because they didn't just want to force the Lukashenko government to react in real time, which they did. They also wanted to show the rest of the world. Because nothing says dictatorship like arresting people for eating ice cream. And of all the stories in the book, these guys are my favorite. And they've done things like this several times. My favorite, although less photogenic, they said, let's all go down to October Square and walk around smiling at each other. Right? There's a dilemma for the cops, right? Right? Arrest any citizen who seems too happy is pretty much a caricature of the police state. Right? So one of the things I think that this shows is so much of what the software does is in the mind of the user, right? Photoshop pretty much does what's in the box when you buy a copy of Photoshop. Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, all the single user bits of software, right? But remember, this is a form specifically designed to lambaste apolitical culture. And in less than 5 years, it's been transformed into a tool of political action by people who needed a tool who did just that and didn't care what was in the minds of the original users. Right? In high freedom environments, like the one we mostly are fortunate to live in, when you deploy new communications tools, they tend to be used for self-amusement. Right? In low freedom environments, in environments where even acting in a group is a political act, is a political statement, those same tools can be deployed to remarkable effect. Right? And it's the inability of the people who design the tools to predict what they'll be used for, or to say they'll be used for X or not for Y, that makes me think this transition we're living through is going to be quite profound.